difference of perfect squares now. Okay, there are a couple of key points that need to be. You can only have two terms. You must have a subtraction sign, and each term must be a perfect square. Those three conditions need to be met, and when you do that, the pattern then is you take the square root of that term, and that shows up in the first parts. You take the square root of that term, and that shows up in the second parts. One becomes a plus, one becomes a minus, and you move on with your life. Okay? So, first thing you look for, is this a perfect square? 16 is a perfect square, x squared is a perfect square, so I've got a perfect square there. Next thing you look for is this a perfect square? 25 is a perfect square, yes, so that's good. And then lastly, we have to make sure that that's a subtraction sign. It is. So this is going to become, the square root of 16x squared is 4x. The square root of 25 is 5. 1 plus, 1 minus, that's that one factor. Okay? Here on this one, again, 81x to the fourth is a perfect square because 81 is a perfect square and x to the fourth is a perfect square. As a side note, any exponent that is even is a perfect square. Okay? So that one's good. 16 is a perfect square, and I have a subtraction sign. So this becomes 9x squared and 9x squared. 4 and 4. 1 plus, 1 minus. But now, because we're factoring completely, now I look at this one, because this is a perfect square, that is a perfect square, and that is a subtraction sign. So this becomes the 9x squared plus 4 comes along for the ride. 3x minus 2 and 3x plus 2. So then this is the complete factorization of that one. On these last two, the problem is that 3x to the sixth is not a perfect square, because 3 is not a perfect square. But if I factor a 3 out, I get, now I have a perfect square, x to the sixth, I have a perfect square, 9, and I have a subtraction sign in between them. So that 3 now comes along for the ride. X cubed minus 3, x cubed plus 3. Doesn't matter which order the addition or subtraction goes in, but then this would be the factor. Here, I have perfect squares, but on top of that, I also have a greatest common factor of x squared. So I'm going to do that first, because the first thing that you should always do is GCF. So then this becomes x to the sixth minus 49. So then the x squared comes along for the ride. X cubed minus 7, x cubed plus 7 is your final answer